Hey everyone, I'm John Sisson, and today we're taking a look at the Laowa 100mm f2.8 macro lens. Now the Laowa 100mm f2.8 is actually a macro lens, but the interesting thing about this one is that it has a magnification of 2 times, whereas other manufacturers have a macro lens that is 1:1. So cool thing about this is that it can get really close to your subject, whether that be insects or flowers or anything that you're shooting. But this is also a manual focus lens, so you don't have autofocus with it. I am using this on the Sony E-mount bodies, so more specifically the A7 III, but it also does come in Nikon and Canon mounts, and the Canon mount actually has electronic contacts on the base of the lens or on the mount of the lens, so you can actually control it through control the aperture through the body of the camera, and you also get XF data going through your photos, whereas with the Canon with the Sony and the Nikon, you unfortunately don't have those options. Because it doesn't have autofocus, I am totally fine with that, because for macro lenses, especially at 100mm focal length, you're going to want to take your time with how you take your photos, especially if it's something close up. Alright, so currently at Olympic Park there are quite a few plants and a few ponds around the area, so this gives me a good opportunity to photograph some insects. I do have the Laowa with me, and I just thought I'd take you around the lens itself just so you can get an idea of what you can expect when you do purchase, or if you are interested in looking at the Laowa 100mm. So obviously it is quite big, it is front heavy, so if anything, definitely support the lens by holding it with your left hand and then taking a photo with your right. It does come supplied with a barrel type lens hood, so it's plastic as well, just to keep the weight down a bit, but it does come with a filter. If you don't get it with the filter, you can actually get quite a bit of dust sucked in through the front element, so I'll just quickly show that to you. So as you can see, it's a long tube. It doesn't extend when you are focusing, which is a good thing, but of course if you're using it, it can potentially suck up some dust and get trapped inside if you don't use a filter, so definitely use one when you are using it. If you do happen to lose it or you need a replacement filter, it does take 67mm filter threads. As you can see here, this is the focus ring, and it does have the focus distance scale actually on the lens itself. So if I am turning it, it is actually quite smooth. Since you are using this for manual focus, you can get a precise focus on the subject you are photographing. Underneath here, you do have an aperture ring. Now there are little click stops that you can hear. It isn't too loud, but for video purposes, you might hear those clicking sounds if you are actually filming something. But you do have a bit of a grip here as well when you are adjusting your aperture, as well as on the manual focus ring. So it is pretty much metal construction wise. Removing the lens from the body, there are no contacts on the lens itself, so you are not able to get XF data, which is a bit of a pain, especially when you are using Laowa lenses, because I did try out a few lenses before and they don't have electronic contacts. So the downside with that is that I don't know what settings I used when it comes to the aperture, but of course you do have the data in terms of what ISO you shot at and your shutter speed as well. My number one recommendation if you're using this lens, definitely use it with a tripod and have it set up in an area where you can expect an insect or something to actually happen, because those are the type of shots that could be worthwhile and worth waiting for as well. So you might be waiting for a few minutes, even a few hours if you are that patient, but something or likely is going to happen around that area. So at the moment I have my the lens situated where it's focused on one of the sticks here that's just hovering over the pond. So if anything, you know, I'm waiting for something to happen. Again, it is sort of like a waiting game, but you know, when you do get that shot, definitely worth it. All in all, the Laowa 100mm is doing a very good job at what I'm capturing, so I don't really have any issues. But if you are shooting handheld, definitely set the stabilization to manual and set it to 100mm, because that's going to compensate for any shake that occurs in your photos, and to some extent some video as well. You know, with macro photography, it's always best to shoot from a distance. The 100mm does give me that option, but you know, if you are taking photos of insects or wildlife or even plants, it's always good to respect the surroundings. So you know, while it's great to take photos and everything, be sure not to disturb their habitat, because you know, you wouldn't want someone to go into your home and then just ruin it just because they can take a few photos. So the cool thing about this is that you can shoot in full frame mode, so you're shooting at 100 millimeters, but also if you wanted to get in a bit closer to your subject, you can always shoot in crop sensor mode, so that will give you 1.5 times magnification, so crop factor, so you're shooting at 150 millimeters. You can also use Sony's clear image zoom, which is something I'm going to demonstrate to you. So I'm at ×1 with using clear image zoom, and if I want to get closer, I can easily do that. So I'm at ×1.5 at the moment, and if I want to get closer again, I'm at ×2. So this is essentially a 200mm lens, and you want to use it when, you know, if you want to isolate your subject even more, or you don't want to get in too close just to disturb your subject. The lens actually has very good bokeh, so that's thanks to its f2.8 aperture and 13 bladed aperture system. My minimum focusing distance of 24.7 centimeters actually transitions very well to infinite, and that's thanks to its very smooth focusing ring, which makes it easier to be a bit more accurate when I'm taking photos or videos of my subject. Now, taking a look at the image quality, it did not disappoint. It was very sharp. I didn't experience any chromatic aberration or vignetting, and having that f2.8 aperture does, like I said, make it better for helping to isolate my subject. I would like to stop it down to perhaps maybe f4 or even f8 or f11, just because when I am shooting, sometimes I would want to get more of my subject in focus, because the focal length does make for a very shallow depth of field, so just be careful with that. But taking a look at the images, it does look like a really good lens alternative to what's on the market. So for example, the Sony 90mm f2.8, while it is stabilized and has autofocus, it is a bit more expensive compared to the Laowa, and the Laowa does have a few pros as to why you would want to get it. For example, that 2:1 magnification ratio, and of course it is fairly cheap. So would I actually recommend the Laowa 100mm f2.8? The quick answer is yes. While it's a niche product, if you're looking for something that has a bit of working room, especially if you're shooting insects where, you know, you really have to be patient with your subject, this can really get a lot of details because of its 2:1 magnification ratio. Now, in terms of value for money, it's right up there. It has a solid build. It isn't too heavy, but it is quite long. So if anything, I would actually recommend using this on a tripod and getting the tripod collar, because that does make things a lot easier when you are shooting. Now, of course, there is no IS built into this lens, but if you're using an A7 III or any other body with stabilization built in, you will have that benefit of having in stabilization. For portraits, it actually comes in really handy as well. Just have to be very careful with the shallow depth of field. So if you're trying to shoot a person's face, usually when you're trying to focus, it's best to have the focus on their eyes. So just be sure of that. So if you have any questions about this lens, please feel free to leave a comment down below. And remember, you can like this video if you found it helpful, and don't forget to take a look at my Instagram page and my Facebook for more information, well, for more sample photos and I guess information about this lens. You can always take a look down in the description below. I also do have affiliate links that do help support the channel and future projects. But until then, happy shooting and thanks for watching. Give you my personal opinions on what I think about. Let's go ahead and take a few photos, and at the end of the video, I'll show you. So let's go ahead and take a few